The stock price was falling faster than anyone could believe, 89% gone in just one day. The digital ticker on the wall blinked red like a warning siren. Phones kept ringing, but no one answered anymore. Desks were being cleared out, boxes filled. With personal things, and the sound of quiet crying echoed through the hallways. On the 47th floor of Blackstone Industries, it didn't feel like an office anymore. It felt like a sinking ship. Richard Blackstone stood still, just outside the elevator, his expensive suit wrinkled and damp under his arms. His tie was loose, his eyes tired and red. He didn't even notice when the elevator doors closed behind him. For the first time in decades, the man known for building an empire looked completely lost. "Sir?" his assistant whispered from behind him. "The board is waiting." He nodded slowly, as if walking to his own funeral. Each step toward the conference room felt heavier than the last. His company, his legacy was falling apart, and he had no idea how to stop it. 3 years of work, millions of dollars, and a promise to the world that their new quantum encryption would be unbreakable, and yet it had been cracked in minutes by a competitor. Now, Blackstone Industries was being called the next big tech. Fraud. News channels were comparing the collapse to Tyrannos. Investors were pulling out. His name, once respected, was now a headline for all the wrong reasons. But just down the hallway, no one noticed the quiet girl hunched inside a tiny janitor's closet, her fingers flying over a battered laptop. Sophia Santos didn't have an office. She didn't have a badge or title. But she had something no one else in the building did an idea. She had spent the last 4 months working on it in secret, listening to company meetings through vents, reading leftover memos from her mother's cleaning shifts, and typing until her fingers hurt. She was only 17, and she'd never stepped foot in a university classroom. But the lines of code on her screen could rewrite the future. "Mom," she whispered, not looking up from the screen. "I think I really solved it." "Maria." Santos, her mother, placed a plate of homemade tamales next to her without a word. Her eyes were tired, her hands rough from years of work. She didn't understand the math on the screen, but she understood her daughter. "She always had. You need to eat," she said gently. Sophia glanced up. "It's the algorithm, the one the whole company failed to build. They're looking at it like a puzzle. But it's not a puzzle, it's like a song. A pattern. That's what they missed." Maria gave a tired smile and brushed a loose strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Do you think they'll even listen?" Sophia asked, her voice small. Maria paused before answering. "Nia, I think it's time they do." Across the hall, Richard reached the conference room. He could hear the voices before the door opened. They weren't whispering anymore. "Richard, we gave you 3 years. One voice said sharply. 3 years and hundreds of millions. "We promised the Pentagon unbreakable encryption," said another. "And now we're a global joke." Richard sat down slowly at the head of the long table. The air in the room was cold and sharp. Around him were faces that used to smile at his jokes and clap at his speeches. Today, those same faces looked at him like he was already gone. "You have until tomorrow morning," said Margaret, the board's lead. "Either you show us something that saves this company, or we announce your resignation." No one said anything after that. Back inside the janitor's closet, Sophia leaned closer to the screen. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from excitement. The numbers lined up. The test simulation worked. She didn't have time. They didn't have time. She stood up quickly. "Mom, he's walking past." Maria followed her daughter's eyes and saw Richard walking alone. Down the hall, his shoulders slumped. "Sophia," she whispered, "you can't. He won't listen." But Sophia had already opened the closet door. Her heart was racing, but her voice was calm. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackstone?" He stopped, slowly turned around. He saw a teenage girl standing in a faded shirt and old jeans, holding a laptop. "I know you don't know me," she said, "but I think I can help you fix your encryption project." Richard blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "My mother is your night janitor," she said, "and I think I've been working." on your problem without even knowing it. Maria stood silently behind her daughter, eyes wide. Richard stared at the two of them. And for the first time in days, he didn't walk away. For a long moment, Richard didn't move. He just stood there, caught between disbelief and exhaustion, staring at the girl with a laptop in her hands and fire in her eyes. She couldn't have been more than 17. Her clothes were simple, her sneakers worn out. Nothing about her said genius. But there was something in her voice, calm, steady, sure. And that made him pause. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice raspy. "From sleepless nights." "Do you even know what you're saying?" Sophia didn't flinch. "Yes, sir, I do. I've been following your company's quantum encryption project for months now, and I think I know why it failed." Richard looked past her at Maria, who stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale. Maria shook her head slightly, as if begging Sophia not to say another word. But Sophia didn't stop. "I've been working on a different approach," she continued. "It's not what your engineers are doing. It's more natural, more aligned with how quantum systems actually behave." I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just couldn't help noticing things. Richard rubbed his forehead and sighed. "Listen, I don't have time for this. I'm dealing with a lot right now." "I know," Sophia said quickly, "and I wouldn't stop you if this wasn't important. But your algorithm, your team treated it like a wall, like something solid. But quantum behavior isn't solid. It's harmonic, like music." That last sentence made Richard look at her again. Really look. That phrase, it was the same one he'd used weeks ago in a brainstorming session with his lead engineers. A private comment. A metaphor, one only. Someone deeply studying the problem would even understand. "Where did you hear that?" he asked. "I didn't hear it. I saw it," she said. "In the data." For a few seconds, the hallway was silent. Even Maria stopped breathing. Finally, Richard said, "Let me see." Sophia handed over the laptop with both hands. It was old and scratched, the keys half worn off. But the screen glowed bright with lines of code and simulation graphs. Richard stared at it, then sat down on a nearby bench without a word. He scrolled slowly, his eyes scanning the logic. The code wasn't messy or guessed at, it was clean, elegant, even beautiful. The kind of beauty that only someone who understood the rhythm of numbers could create. "This is," he muttered. "This is the exact failure point we couldn't solve." Sophia nodded. "I noticed the problem with your use of quantum key distribution. Your system collapses under decoherence because it resists it. But I embraced it instead. I think that's the key." Richard looked up again. His eyes were no longer fogged with despair. They were awake now. Focused. Maria finally found her voice. "Sir, I'm sorry. She shouldn't have stopped you. She's been working so hard." But Richard shook his head. "No, don't apologize." He looked at Sophia, more curious than cautious now. "You said you've been working on this for months?" "Yes, in here," she said, pointing toward the closet. "My mom works late nights, so I come with her. I found some old computers. Took them apart, read whatever I could find. Your engineers throw out more knowledge than most people ever get to see. So I used it." Richard's brows furrowed. "Where do you go to school?" "Hamilton Public High, South Side," she replied quietly. "Public school?" Sophia nodded. "But I taught myself most of this. Books, free online classes." "Open courseware. Anything I could get my hands on." "In college? Have you applied?" Sophia hesitated. "Yes, everywhere. But they all said the same thing. I don't have the right background. No prep school, no recommendations. My SAT scores were perfect, but they said I wasn't a fit." Richard set the laptop on his knee and looked at her again, this time with something deeper than interest respect. "And you're 17? I turn 8 in December. And you came up with this here? In a janitor's closet?" Sophia shrugged. "It's quiet, and no one bothers me." Richard stood slowly and handed the laptop back to her. Come with me. Maria took a step forward. Where? To the conference room, he said. You're going to show this to my team. Sir, Maria said again, but softer this time. She's just a girl. No, Richard said firmly. She's not just anything. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the laptop, but her face was calm. She didn't say anything as she followed him down the hallway. Her heart was pounding, but not from fear. From possibility and as they passed rows of empty desks and panicked employees, no one noticed that the girl walking behind the CEO had just changed the course of the entire company in a closet. Genius had bloomed quietly now. It was about to be heard. Sophia had walked these halls for years, but always in the shadows. She knew the sound of the floor beneath her sneakers, the exact timing of the cleaning schedule, which lights flickered, and which executives stayed late. But walking behind the CEO, her laptop clutched to her chest, everything felt different now, brighter. Heavier, real. Maria followed a few steps behind, still unsure whether she should feel proud, terrified, or both. Her daughter was about to walk into a room filled with the smartest, richest people in the company. People who wouldn't normally look twice at a cleaning lady, let alone her daughter. People who had no idea that the answer they were so desperately chasing had been living just down the hall in the supply closet. The conference room doors were already open. Inside, two senior executives sat at the polished table, speaking in low tones. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the company's chief technology officer, looked up first. She adjusted her glasses and frowned when she saw Richard walk in with a teenager and the janitor. Richard? She asked carefully. Dr. James Liu, the company's lead quantum systems researcher, turned in his chair. Is this a meeting? Richard didn't waste time. Everyone, this is Sophia Santos, and she might be the reason we still have jobs tomorrow. The two executives exchanged a quick glance. Sophia could feel their eyes on her. She knew that, look, she'd seen it at school, during interviews and waiting rooms. Doubt. The kind that ran deep. Before a single word was even spoken, Richard pulled out a chair for Sophia. Show them. Sophia hesitated for a second. Her palms were sweaty. Her voice caught in her throat. But then she remembered the hours spent huddled over her laptop, the nights of falling asleep beside code and equations. She had earned this moment. She walked to the wall screen and carefully connected her laptop. The desktop looked nothing like a professional setup. There were folders labeled tests, ideas, and maybe this works too. The background was a photo of her and her mom, smiling in front of their old apartment building. The screen came to life with spinning models and code. Her code? What? You're looking at, Sophia began, her voice low but clear, is a different approach to quantum key distribution. Your team built a system designed to resist decoherence, but that's why it failed. Decoherence isn't something you can stop, it's something you have to work with. Dr. Liu leaned back in his chair. You're suggesting we embrace quantum instability? I'm suggesting we choreograph it, she replied. Like music. The room went quiet. I'm sorry, said Dr. Warren. Music? Sophia nodded. Quantum systems behave like jazz. At first, it seems random. But there's a deep structure, patterns, and harmonies. Right now, your system treats quantum data like a wall to protect. I treat it like a song to compose. Dr. Liu raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do you compose an encryption key using chaos? Sophia smiled just slightly. It's not chaos if you understand the rhythm. I created pseudo-random decoherence, patterns that mirror natural harmonics. The randomness becomes part of the encryption itself. A hacker without the melody can't decode it even with quantum computers. Richard stepped forward. Show them the simulation results. Sophia clicked a few keys. A 3D model appeared, lines and patterns pulsing across the screen, glowing softly. She played a simulation where her system held stable against all known attacks, including the one that had destroyed Blackstone's reputation just days earlier. The attack that had cracked their original system in 8 minutes? Her simulation. Blocked it in milliseconds. Dr. Warren blinked. Is this real? I've tested it over and over. I used open source libraries, ran simulations on an old GPU, but if I had access to your hardware, I could scale it and prove it in real time. Dr. Liu leaned forward. How long did this take you? 4 months, she replied. But I've been thinking about the concepts for years. Dr. Warren crossed her arms, studying her closely. Where did you study? I didn't. Sophia said. I applied. MIT, Stanford, Harvard. They all said no. Sighed I lacked the foundation. Dr. Warren frowned. With work like this. My SAT scores were perfect, but I didn't go to the right schools. Didn't have recommendations from the right people. The room was silent again, but this time it was different. Less skeptical. More unsettled. Maria stood near the door, her hands clenched tightly. She wasn't sure whether to cry or run out of the room. This was her daughter, her brilliant daughter. But the way these people were looking at her now, she wasn't invisible anymore. She was undeniable. Richard looked at his team. Thoughts? Dr. Liu shook his head slowly. If her math is right and it looks right, then this isn't just a fix. This is groundbreaking. Not just for encryption, added Dr. Warren, but for how we understand quantum behavior itself. Richard turned to Sophia. How do you get started with quantum computing? I read your shareholder report, she said, shrugging. It mentioned quantum key research. I got curious. He laughed, the sound dry and shocked. You read our shareholder report? I read everyone's, she said simply. I wanted to understand where the world was going. Richard leaned back in his chair, still staring at the screen. Then he asked a question he hadn't asked anyone in weeks, not his board, not his advisors, not even himself. Can you save us? Sophia didn't answer with words. She let her code speak for her. And it sang a song no one had heard before, not from a lab, not from a classroom dot, but from a janitor's closet, where the door had finally opened. The sun had gone down hours ago, but the lights in the 47th floor conference room burned bright. The glass walls reflected flickers of code and spinning models from the large display screen. Inside, the air was tense, but not with panic anymore. It was something else now, anticipation. Sophia stood in front of a room full of people who had never seen her before today. People who held PhDs, years of experience, $1 million salaries. And yet now, they were leaning forward in their chairs listening to her, the janitor's daughter. She clicked to the next slide. Her hands were still slightly shaky, but her voice had grown stronger with each sentence. So, instead of treating decoherence as a flaw, we embed it into the encryption. We use it as a signature, like a musical variation unique to each key. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, who had once dismissed Sophia's presence with a frown, now held a pen in her hand, scribbling. Notes faster than she could read them. You're saying the randomness we've been fighting is predictable? Not predictable in a traditional sense, Sophia explained. It's patterned, not static, but structured. Like jazz, at first it sounds messy. But there's a rhythm, a shape. Dr. James Liu ran a hand through his thinning hair. But how do you recreate that rhythm on the receiving end? Wouldn't the key get lost in the noise? That's the beauty, Sophia replied. Each key carries a signature, a mathematical melody. If you know the composition, you can follow it. The encryption isn't broken by the noise. It is the noise, controlled, directed. Maria stood quietly in the back, her fingers clasped tight over her chest. She'd never imagined this. Her daughter, barely 18, was teaching the top scientists at one of the most powerful tech companies in the world. And they were actually listening. When Sophia finished her presentation, there was silence, but it wasn't awkward or dismissive. It was stunned. Richard Blackstone was the first to speak. I want to implement this right now. Dr. Warren nodded slowly. We'll need to run real-time tests. I want her working with our team starting tomorrow. Sophia hesitated. Tomorrow? You don't want to? Richard asked. No. I do, she said quickly. But school. The room went quiet again. Not out of disapproval this time, but because everyone suddenly realized what she had just said. This girl who had outcoded a team of industry veterans was still a high school student. Richard glanced at Maria. Has she always been like this? Maria laughed softly. Always. Always different. Always thinking. Even when we had nothing, she'd spend hours reading old textbooks I found at the thrift store. I didn't always understand what she was talking about, but I always knew it was something big. Sophia lowered her eyes for a second. I wanted to go to college, MIT, Stanford. I applied everywhere. And, Dr. Liu asked, they all rejected me. On what grounds? Dr. Warren looked shocked. They said I didn't have the right background, no elite high school, no official recommendation letters, no resources. She said it without bitterness, but the pain was obvious. Richard stood. Well, that ends here. He walked to the head of the table and looked at her directly. Sophia, I want to offer you a position. Senior research consultant, full-time. Paid, we'll work around your school schedule. Or if you prefer, Blackstone will sponsor your enrollment in any university in the world. Full scholarship, research funding, you name it. Sophia blinked. What? You've already done work that top graduates can't. You belong here, Sophia, and anywhere else you want to go. Maria's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say, Sophia stammered. Richard smiled gently. Say yes. Sophia looked down at her laptop, the same one she typed on in a closet surrounded by mops and bleach. She thought about every rejection letter, every counselor who told her to dream smaller, every late night her mom worked just so she could chase an impossible future. She looked up. Okay, yes. The room exhaled together relief, wonder, maybe even a bit of awe. Richard turned to his team. We're rebuilding this company around her solution. We start testing at 8 a.m. Dr. Liu, still stunned, mumbled, This is history in the making. No, Richard corrected. This is the future. And we just found it mopping our floors. As the meeting ended and people slowly filed out, Sophia stood in the empty conference room, looking at the city lights outside the glass wall. Maria walked up beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. You did it, Mia, Sophia nodded. I'm just getting started. Behind them, the screens dimmed, the models faded, and the laptop shut itself off, not because the moment was over, but because it was finally time for the world to turn. On in Sierra Dot by the next morning, everything at Blackstone Industries had changed. The halls were still quiet, but it wasn't the silence of failure anymore. It was focus. The kind that happens when people know something big is happening behind. The scenes dot inside the research wing. Sophia sat at her new desk and actual workstation, not a mop bucket turned sideways. She still wore the same jeans and hoodie from the day before, her backpack resting at her feet. But now, her screen was connected to one of the most powerful quantum testing labs in the country. On one side of her was Dr. Liu, furiously writing formulas on a digital tablet. On the other side was Dr. Warren, coordinating teams to run live encryption simulations using Sophia's code. Sophia hardly blinked. Every result confirmed what she'd already tested in the closet. Her algorithm worked. It didn't just patch Blackstone's broken encryption system, it rewrote the rules. It handled attacks faster, ran more efficiently, and was more secure than anything else in the industry. By noon, Richard had held an emergency meeting with the company's largest investors. Within 48 hours, the media headlines had shifted from Blackstone collapse to Blackstone breakthrough. The company's stock, once in free fall, surged higher than ever. But with the attention came something else. Pressure. The news began to spread beyond the tech world. Reporters started digging. Who was Sophia Santos? How had a teenager from a working-class family created technology that the world's brightest minds couldn't? One article called her a quantum prodigy. Another said she was the next Einstein in sneakers. But not everyone was celebrating. On Thursday morning, Richard sat in his office, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. His phone buzzed. Again, a call from a blocked number. He answered out of habit. "Mr. Blackstone," said a clipped voice. "This is Dr. Harrison Whitmore, Dean of Admissions at Stanford." Richard sat up straighter. "How can I help you?" "I understand you've recently hired a young woman by the name of Sophia Santos. She applied to our university last year." "That's correct," Richard replied, already feeling a strange tension in the man's voice. "I'm calling as a courtesy," Whitmore continued. "It's important that you're aware. Miss Santos lacks the proper academic foundation for the kind of work your company is claiming she's done." There was a pause. Richard leaned forward slowly. "She didn't claim anything, she proved it. And our systems are now more secure because of her." "I'm simply concerned," the man continued, "that elevating someone with no formal training could lead to misunderstandings about what's considered legitimate research." "Let me be clear," Richard said, his voice steady and sharp. "Sophia solved a problem your graduates couldn't, if you're questioning her work. It's not her credentials you should be worried about, it's yours." He ended the call without another word, but that was only the beginning. Within hours, more calls came in. Harvard, MIT, Princeton. Each conversation different in words, but the same in tone, quiet warnings. Questions wrapped in politeness. Doubt. Dressed as concern, Richard's hands were trembling with rage. It wasn't just about Sophia anymore. It was about a system, a powerful one that didn't want to be embarrassed. That didn't want a girl from a janitor's closet rewriting what its graduates had failed to do. Later that afternoon, a message appeared in Richard's inbox from someone unexpected, Dr. Sarah Kim. A respected quantum physicist at MIT. Her note was short but urgent. "I need to speak with you about why Sophia was really rejected from our program. This isn't just about her. It's bigger than you think." Richard picked up the phone immediately. The moment she answered, he could hear the tension in her voice. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner," Dr. Kim said. "But I've watched this for years. A quiet pattern. Brilliant students from working-class backgrounds, especially women, especially students of color, being quietly filtered out of top programs. You're saying Sophia was blacklisted?" Richard asked. "Yes," Kim replied. "Not officially. That's not how these systems work. But her application was flagged. There are whispers, informal notes passed between admissions teams. They say students like her require extra support, that they're high risk for elite programs." Richard leaned back in his chair, stunned. "She had perfect scores. They don't care," Kim replied. "They say it's about academic fit, but really, it's about protecting status, prestige. People like Sophia challenge the idea that brilliance comes from a fancy prep school or an expensive last name. She's dangerous to that lie." Richard was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Not anymore." After the call, he walked down to the research lab. Sophia looked up, surprised to see him. "Can we talk?" he asked. She followed him to a small side room where he closed the door. "I need to ask you something," Richard said quietly. "And I want you to be completely honest. Do you feel like the system has been working against you?" Sophia gave a soft, tired laugh. "Mr. Blackstone, I felt that way my entire life." She listed it off without emotion, like facts on a chalkboard. The teachers who steered her toward practical careers. The guidance counselor who said her dream school wasn't realistic. The rejection letters that didn't even offer feedback. "I thought maybe I just wasn't good enough," she said. "But deep down I knew I was. I just didn't know how to make anyone see it." Richard nodded, his throat tight. "Well, they're going to see it now," he said. "And not just because of what you built, but because of what we're going to expose." Sophia frowned. "Expose?" "I'm not just fixing a company anymore," Richard said. I'm fixing the system that almost let your brilliance go to waste. He looked her in the eyes. We're going to show the world what happens when genius is ignored. And then we're going to make sure it never gets ignored again. And just like that, another door opened, one bigger than any boardroom. A door into truth, injustice, and change. Within 72 hours of implementing Sophia's encryption model, Blackstone Industries had transformed from a company gasping for air to the leader of a technological revolution. Every major cybersecurity outlet was reporting it. Blackstone had done the impossible. The encryption algorithm, once dismissed as broken, had become the most secure and efficient system on the market, thanks to a teenage girl with no degree, no connections, and no acceptance letters. Governments, military agencies, Fortune 500. Companies, they were all calling. The Pentagon scheduled a private demo. Tech giants wanted partnerships. Journalists wanted interviews. And yet, amid all the excitement, Richard Blackstone knew something darker was underneath the surface, because Sophia Santos hadn't just saved a company, she had exposed a flaw in the system far bigger than any failed algorithm, and the system was trying to fight back. Richard kept receiving emails, phone calls, even veiled suggestions from concerned professionals that Sophia's work might not be original. One message actually said, "It's hard to believe someone from her background developed this independently." That one hit him hardest. Not because it was surprising, but because it was expected. He knew what that message really meant. And Sophia, she knew too. At first, she tried to ignore it, focusing on the growing research team, the positive results, the chance to finally work on the machines she'd only dreamed about. But it was impossible to miss. She saw the whispers in meetings, the quick glances when she walked past, the polite questions that turned into test people pretending to be curious, but really just hoping to catch her making a mistake, even after everything she'd done. Even now, they were still trying to prove she didn't belong. Then came this story. Published by a respected outlet. The headline read, "Quantum Leap or Lucky Guess? The Unlikely Rise of Blackstone's Teen Tech Star." The article was filled with subtle doubt. It questioned whether Sophia had truly created the encryption model on her own. It quoted anonymous industry experts, saying it would be highly unusual for someone without formal training to achieve such results. It even suggested, without proof, that someone else might have helped her behind the scenes. Sophia didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just closed her laptop and stared at the wall in silence. Maria found her that night sitting on the floor of her bedroom, her back against the wall, laptop still in her lap. The light from the screen glowed on her face, but her eyes were distant. "They'll never see me, will they?" Sophia whispered. Maria knelt beside her and touched her shoulder. "They don't want to see you, Mia. That's different. But now they have no choice." Sophia looked up. What if they tear it down? What if they keep pretending people like me don't exist? Maria's voice didn't shake. "Then we build something so big, they can't ignore it." That next morning, Richard made a bold move. He didn't schedule a meeting. He didn't release a memo. He called a press conference, and he invited everyone, media outlets, tech leaders, civil rights groups, university admissions heads, scientists from around the world, and he didn't speak first. Sophia did. Standing in the same boardroom where she had first shown her algorithm, she now faced a sea of cameras and flashing lights. "My name is Sophia Santos," she began. "I'm 18 years old. My mom is a janitor. I wasn't accepted by any top university. I didn't grow up with tutors or internships or access. I wrote code in a supply closet because that's what we had, and that code saved this company." She paused. "I'm not telling you that to get sympathy. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something. Brilliance exists in places you're not looking. It exists in students working night jobs, in kids using broken laptops, in communities you've ignored." The room was silent. Not out of politeness, but because her words had cut through. "I didn't ask to be here," she continued. "I earned it. But even after I did, people still question me. not because of my work, but because of my name, my background, my story. Sophia raised her chin slightly, her voice clear and strong. I'm done asking for permission to be brilliant, and I'm not the only one. After she finished, Richard stood and announced the creation of the Santis Foundation, a $500 million initiative dedicated to identifying and supporting overlooked students from underrepresented backgrounds in STEM. But that wasn't all. He also revealed that a group of civil rights lawyers, funded by Blackstone, had uncovered proof of systemic bias in elite university admissions. They had documents, emails, flagged application notes, all showing a pattern of rejecting students like Sophia, not based on merit, but based on assumptions, and he named it plainly: intellectual discrimination. The fallout was immediate. Within days, deans of admissions resigned. The FBI opened an investigation. Congress called for hearings. National conversations erupted. But while the world debated, Sophia kept working in her new lab. She began mentoring young coders brought in through the Santis Foundation, teenagers who reminded her of herself, quiet, brilliant, overlooked. The cafeteria worker who used to sneak extra food into Sophia's backpack for late-night coding sessions. She now led Blackstone's internal mentorship program. The security guard who always asked about her projects, he was now working as an analyst after sharing an idea that ended up detecting cyber threats. Weeks before the company's current system, change was happening, real structural change, and yet Sophia never let it go to her head. You're not building a company anymore, Maria told Richard one afternoon. You're building a movement. He nodded slowly, watching Sophia lead her team through a new simulation. And she's the right one to lead it. The world had tried to bury her brilliance, but brilliance doesn't stay buried. It rises. It shines. And it leads. 6 months had passed since Sophia Santis walked out of a janitor's closet and rewrote the future. The world had changed. Elite universities were under investigation. Congressional hearings were being broadcast live. Headlines called it the biggest education discrimination scandal in decades. Words like intellectual bias, hidden gatekeeping, and systemic academic exclusion were on every news channel. But for Sophia, the most important change wasn't happening in boardrooms or courtrooms. It was happening in the eyes of students just like her, who were finally being seen. The Santis Foundation had already reviewed over 30,000 applications from across the country. Young minds who'd been told, "You're not good enough," were now being offered scholarships, laptops, mentors, and for the first time, a real chance. One student from rural Texas had built an AI that predicted wildfire patterns more accurately than NASA's model. A girl from Detroit had coded her own medical imaging tool using free internet at her local library. A boy from a migrant farming family in California had created a math app that was helping kids across 3 continents. Sophia had never even met these students, but they all said the same thing in their applications. I saw Sophia, and now I believe in me. It was more than a compliment. It was a spark, a chain reaction, proof that one person's courage can make thousands braver. Inside Blackstone Industries, Sophia had become more than a consultant. She was now the youngest senior director in company history, leading a division focused entirely on advanced quantum systems. Her encryption work had already been adopted by 3 global governments. Her newer research focused on quantum-enhanced machine learning was opening up doors no one had even imagined. Yet, despite the awards, the invitations, the magazine covers, Sophia stayed the same. She still brought her mom lunch twice a week. She still kept her old laptop, the scratched one from the closet, in a glass case on her desk, with a handwritten note beside it: "Where I started doesn't limit where I go." And she still answered every email from young students who reached out for help, advice, or just hope. But she wasn't done yet, not even close, because Sophia had one more idea, something personal, something that had lived in her heart long before the world ever knew her name. It started as a sketch in her notebook, then became a blueprint, and finally, a reality. The Santis Institute for Innovative Learning, a new kind of school, not built for the privileged, not shaped by standardized tests or legacy admissions, but designed from the ground up to find potential, not just preparation. There would be no SATs, no fancy applications. Instead, students would earn entry through challenges, real-world problems, code puzzles, engineering simulations, essays that asked what if instead of how many. It would be a place where a janitor's daughter could feel as worthy as a senator's son, where creativity mattered as much as calculation. And where no one would ever again have to prove their worth from inside a cleaning closet. The first campus opened in the heart of the city. Sophia gave the keynote speech, but she didn't wear a lab coat or a designer suit. She wore a plain blue hoodie and jeans, the same outfit from the day she met Richard Blackstone in that hallway. "My name is Sophia Santos," she told the crowd, "and I wasn't supposed to be here." She paused, letting the moment breathe. Every system told me I didn't belong. But here's the truth. Brilliance isn't limited to those who can afford it. Genius doesn't need permission. All it needs is a chance. Applause filled the auditorium, but Sophia's eyes were fixed on one person in the front row. Maria Santos, no longer wearing a janitor's uniform, now dressed in a sharp blazer, a name badge on her chest. Director of Campus Operations, Santos. Institute. When Maria took the stage to introduce her daughter, her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't crack. 18 months ago, she said, my daughter was coding in a closet. Today, she's opening a school where no child will ever have to hide their brilliance again. The audience stood, but Sophia just smiled quietly, watching her mother speak. She knew what this moment meant. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about proving what was possible. Later, as the building emptied and the night grew quiet, Sophia stood alone in the school's main hallway. Her footsteps echoed softly across polished floors. Along the wall was a small museum display. Inside it, the old laptop. Above it, carved in stone. Brilliance needs no permission. Genius needs only a chance. Richard Blackstone walked up behind her, hands in his pockets. You've done something special, he said. Sophia nodded. We've only just started. You happy? He asked, just like he had months ago in his office. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, I'm fulfilled. I'm building something that lasts. And I know there's a kid out there right now, probably working late, probably feeling invisible, who's going to walk through these doors one day and change the world. Richard smiled. Because you showed them it was possible. Sophia looked out the window, the city lights blinking in the distance. No, she said quietly. Because someone gave me the chance to show myself. Outside the school, a line of young students waited, backpacks on, dreams bigger than the sky, and inside, a revolution waited to welcome them. It had started in a closet. Now it was ready to light up the world.